Buenos dias, children! The MCU is back with its first Disney Plus show, WandaVision. Straight out the gate, I'm gonna be blasting you all with spoilers, because I just assumed that you already watched WandaVision if you're watching this video. Or if you're watching this video because you're just so entranced at how handsome I am, then... Hi, welcome to the video. It's just that I can't really get into my issues with WandaVision without getting into the spoilers, so... yeah. Just know that I thought it was pretty good. But from here onward, I'm just gonna be talking about the show in its entirety, no holds barred, nothing held back. Just, you've been warned. Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany as Wanda and Vision are, honestly, they're the best parts of this show. I mean, they kind of have to be the best parts of WandaVision, just because, you know, the show is literally named after them. And, you know, if the two leads of a romantic dramedy show aren't very good and don't have much chemistry, then it all just kind of comes falling apart. But Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany, they're just really cute in this show. Honestly, before WandaVision, they were never really the highlights of any of the movies that they were in. Other than Vision in Age of Ultron and a little bit of both of them in Civil War, they don't really have much to do. They're kind of just present and act as like the supporting characters. But I mean, to be fair, they had to share the spotlight with characters like fucking Captain America and Iron Man, so... understandably so, they weren't really the main focus of a lot of those big budget movies and shit. I like that WandaVision and other MCU shows that are gonna be released on Disney Plus will give audiences the opportunity to learn more about these side characters from the other movies and stuff. Wanda and Vision have definitely stood out with this show, and they've firmly established themselves as the best romance in the MCU. If you weren't shipping Wanda and Vision, you're definitely shipping them now. And I can guarantee you that they're gonna be the inspiration for a lot of couple Halloween 2021 costumes. Jesus Christ, it's gonna be so fucking nauseating. I want to dress up as Budget Vision though. They bounce off of each other really well, and you get to see them in many different ways, not just like aesthetically with the different sitcoms and different eras that they're trying to like kind of spoof and shit, but also in just how dynamic their relationship is. We see the relationship go through many different phases, and get it, phases, because Marvel phases. And I think that's really interesting. That one scene where Vision kind of snaps at Wanda because of all the fucked up shit that she's doing, it's actually kind of intense. And by the end of the series, when Wanda has to go say goodbye to Vision and her kids, or their kids, it's pretty emotional actually. Even though they were fake and created by Wanda, you can tell how much that kind of lifestyle meant to her and how much she wanted that. The first 4 episodes of WandaVision are definitely the strongest episodes of the series, but not just because of how different they are and how much they stand out from like the typical Marvel shit, but also just because of how well they build up that mystery and that intrigue, while also being able to maintain building up the characters and their motivations and their relationship. There's a real sense of dread and uneasiness that's really built up well in those first few episodes. And the way that WandaVision handles each style of like sitcom era really helps each episode stand out and each moment stand out from each other. And I like that each filmmaking style is different depending on which era that they're trying to emulate. I feel like a lot of people who I know who watched WandaVision, including myself, really enjoyed the Malcolm in the Middle 90s/2000s era style the most out of all of like the sitcoms that they tackled. But what I liked the most with how they handled this era was the commercial that was attached to this episode. It reminded me of how the commercials back then were really weird and low-key kind of fucked up. The other eras were really cute too, but I guess I was just born in the wrong generation to really appreciate like the I Love Lucy's, the Brady Bunch nods, and shit like that. The show starts off really great, but around episode 5 is when things kind of start to conform itself back into like the typical Marvel shtick that like everybody knows by now. There's the whole real world military side plot where they try to save the town from Wanda, and it actually does start off pretty interesting, being that the events of this story take place not too long after Iron Man snaps everyone back to life. I genuinely want to see more stories told from the perspective of non-Avengers characters of the snap. But none of that culminates into anything, and none of the characters are interesting enough to carry a scene or do anything of impact. The writing for basically every side character is just really bad. Monica's only purpose in this show is so she can have superpowers for Captain Marvel 2. The only reason Darcy is in the show is because Why is Darcy in this show? She doesn't even show up by the end. She did just say that she just fucks off, you know? At least have her show up at the end with, like, Monica and Wu, and, like, have them be like, oh, that was a weird thing together, but they couldn't even do that with Darcy. Look, I love Randall Park. I love seeing him and shit. It always warms my heart. But all he does in this show is his fucking card trick, and that's it. Did you know that the card trick that he does is the same card trick that he tries to learn in Ant-Man and the Wasp? I'm sorry, I'm being mean now. Honestly, even in the grand scheme of things, Agatha doesn't even really matter. I actually do like Agatha as a character. I think she's kind of interesting, and Catherine Hahn seemed like she was having a lot of fun in the role. But when the military's spamming their emergency meetings, and are like, guys, I'm telling you, Agatha's mad sus! And it turned out it actually was Wanda who was holding this town hostage. It's like, okay, I guess it wasn't Agatha all along. I actually just realized this, but like, Wanda also faces no consequences for anything that she did. I'd say that she got a slap on the wrist, but she didn't even get that! You'd think that by the end when the town is freed, that Norm and the other residents would just be marginally upset with what Wanda did. You know, at least a little bit more than like a disgruntled stare. Wanda literally trapped an entire town and brainwashed every single resident into thinking that they were living in Modern Family. How much worse could that get? Even the final battle between Agatha and Wanda just kind of devolves into like the typical superhero final battle, fucking shooting lasers at each other, flying in the sky and shit like that. Which was kind of disappointing just because of the magic that Wanda and Agatha have been shown throughout the series that they're capable of. You'd think that there would be a little bit more interesting things going on with the final battle visually and with the choreography and shit. I mean, we even saw that with Doctor Strange in his own movie and also in Infinity War. Personally, I thought it would have been cool if the final battle had consisted of Wanda and Agatha fighting and, like, jumping through the different time periods that we've seen periodically through the show. I'm not saying that I'm immune to, like, shutting my brain off and just watching a cool light show and shit, but this show has shown... I'm saying show a lot. Has shown... It's shown that it can be a lot more clever and conceptual. I do like that Wanda uses Agatha's trick to beat her at the end, and I also like that Vision's final battle is just a philosophy debate with himself. It reminded me of that one really good scene in Age of Ultron where Vision and Ultron are in the forest just talking about existing. But speaking of characters who got introduced in Age of Ultron, got a bit of a bone to pick. A boner to pick, if you will. Ew. Fan theories can get a little out of hand at times, but it is still fun to speculate and discuss with other people just what's gonna happen. If fans think that a thing is bad simply because their fan theories didn't come true, or their predictions didn't come true, then that's their own fault, really. If the end product of a movie doesn't match predictions or theories, then that's okay, as long as it's still good and it still makes sense. However, in this case, if fans were disappointed, I can't really blame them. On one hand, I'm glad that the story was focused on Wanda and how she was dealing with her grief on losing someone who she had a real connection with. I feel like I was one of the few people who actually didn't really want Mephisto to show up in this. Shit, with the whole Agatha thing, I barely even wanted Agatha as a main villain. In short, I don't think this show needed a villain or an antagonist in the traditional way to make its story compelling. Yeah, it would have been cool to see ties to like the X-Men or the Fantastic Four or some shit, but honestly that probably would have just muddied the plot even more. Plus, there are plenty more opportunities to have these characters and franchises be introduced and tossed into the MCU. We're literally getting a movie called The Multiverse of Madness. We can wait a little bit. But on the other hand, you can't just cast Evan Peters to play literally the same fucking character that he does in other Marvel movies from the other side of the pond, literally name him Boner, and then in interviews say, "Oh, I sure hope that people don't think that this was a prank." Like, come on. You literally named him Boner. You knew exactly what you were doing. Stop trying to act cute. At least Paul Bettany admitted that he was just trolling. It's just that the whole Quicksilver thing just turns out to actually be nothing. Like, what was the point of even bringing in Evan Peters if he was just gonna be nothing. They might as well have just brought Aaron Taylor Johnson back. This show is really ambitious compared to like the average MCU and even the average like superhero movie or show in general. And there are moments in the show that prove that Marvel is willing to take those like conceptual risks. But again, a lot of what the show builds up in the first few episodes ends up not really mattering by the end. And it just would have been cool to at least gotten like something. If WandaVision had been just like 5 to 6 episodes that are just honed in entirely on like Wanda and her mental health and Vision and maybe a little bit of Agatha, then it would have been perfect. I feel like I'm making this seem a lot more negative than I really want it to be. So let me think of another positive. The Scarlet Witch costume looks really cool. It kind of looks like the Daredevil costume, except when Daredevil got canceled, the costume department at Marvel was like, okay, we gotta reuse this suit for something. Let's use it for Scarlet Witch. And shout out to Paul Bettany for probably having to do just a shit ton of makeup rounds, man. He had to do makeup for regular Red Vision, he had to do makeup for bogus Red Vision, he had to do makeup for whitewashed Vision. I can tell you right now that that's not easy to sit through. It's very repetitive. Shout out to Paul Bettany for sitting through that and being committed to it. Shout out to the makeup department for all that. It's not easy, so I had a really fun time, not just with watching the show, but also amongst the discourse, even though I just shit on like fan theorizing and all that shit. But still, it was a lot of fun. Even though some things in WandaVision didn't pay off the way I wanted to, and even though a lot of the side characters, basically every side character, oh my god, I forgot about that, what's his name, Westbrook? It's like Hayward or some shit like that. What a fucking terrible villain. What a terrible, terrible character he was. I still think that WandaVision is pretty entertaining, and if you just needed that MCU fix, this is a good way to get it. So I'm feeling a 7 for WandaVision. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, make sure you leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed what you saw. Leave a comment on what you think about WandaVision. What do you think is going to happen in Phase 4? What did you think of the ending? Did any of your fan predictions come true? Just feel free to discuss what you thought of WandaVision. I would love to hear what you guys think. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching again, and I'll see you guys in the next one.